Through the storm of illusion he felt a flicker, faint, fragile, but there, Solari's presence. It brushed against his mind like a hand in the dark. "James," her voice whispered, not in his ears but in his soul. "Do not let go. I am here." He gasped, clinging to that thread. "Solari." The darkness twisted again. He saw Solari herself now, bound in chains, her people turning their backs on her, calling her a traitor for choosing a human. Her eyes were filled with despair as the council condemned her. James felt her anguish through the bond, sharp and raw. His chest burned. He could not let her face this alone. He reached through the bond with everything he had, sending his own strength, his stubborn hope, his memories of Earth, not the fire, not the ruin, but the beauty. The oceans he loved, the forests alive with wind, the laughter of children playing. "Look at me, Solari," he whispered through the link. "This isn't the end. We're stronger together. Don't give in." Her presence wavered, then grew, stronger. He felt her pushing back against the illusions, sending her own memories into him. Fields of silver grass under twin suns, the warmth of her brother's laughter before the war took him, the pride she felt standing before her people, for the first time. Strength and sorrow mixed together, but they were hers, and she shared them without fear. Together, their memories clashed against the storm. The illusions screamed, twisting harder, showing death, loss, betrayal. But every time one faltered, the bond held. James pushed with his human stubbornness, Solari with her alien grace. Step by step, they forced the darkness back. The world cracked again, light pouring through the fractures like dawn breaking over night. James stumbled forward, reaching out blindly. His hand touched another, warm, steady. Solari's hand, the illusion shattered. He opened his eyes and found himself lying on the floor of the council chamber. His chest heaved as he tried to breathe, sweat dripping from his face. Beside him, Solari knelt, pale and trembling, but alive. Their hands were still clasped tightly together. The crystal above them glowed brighter than ever, its pulse steady, unbroken. The chamber was silent. Every council member stared, their eyes fixed on the bond that had not broken. James met Solari's gaze. For the first time, he saw not just duty in her eyes, but trust. The trial of unity had tried to break them, but they had endured, and together, they had won. The trial was over, but James soon learned the trial had only been the beginning. Though the crystal had confirmed their bond, the council was not quick to accept. Some among them whispered that what they had seen could be illusion itself, that humans were tricksters who hid weakness behind bold words. Others doubted Solari, accusing her of lowering herself by binding with an outsider. The weight of their doubt pressed heavily on both of them, and the bond, though strong, carried its own strain. At night, James often woke in his chamber with a pressure in his chest that wasn't his own. Solari's memories bled into his dreams. Her brother falling, in battle, the look in her father's eyes when she failed to meet his impossible expectations, the loneliness she carried even in rooms full of her people. The bond made her wounds his, and though he tried to bear them, there were times he felt as if he was drowning in emotions too heavy for one heart. One evening, Solari stood on the balcony overlooking the twin moons. The city of crystal spread, below, glowing faintly in the night. James stepped quietly beside her. For a while they said nothing, but the bond buzzed between them, restless, unsettled. Finally, Solari spoke. "The bond is strong, yet fragile. Do you feel it?" James nodded slowly. "Like a rope stretched too tight. It holds, but it could snap if we pull too hard." Solari's silver eyes lingered on him. "The council will not stop testing us. They want us to break. If we falter, it will not only be our lives, it will be peace itself that dies." Her words carved fear into James's chest, but at the same time, they hardened his resolve. He stepped closer, his voice steady. "Then we can't break, not now, not ever." But it was easier said than done. The council arranged another test, harsher than before. This time, James and Solari were placed inside separate chambers, far from each other. The bond was their only link. The high speaker's voice rang out cold and sharp. If you are truly one, no wall, no distance, no fear will sever you. Prove it. Darkness swallowed James again. His chest tightened. This was different from the first trial. The illusions here weren't grand, weren't flames and screaming cities. They were quieter, sharper, more personal. He saw himself as a child standing alone in a schoolyard while others mocked him. He saw the look of disappointment on his father's face when he failed at something simple. He heard voices whispering, "You are not enough. You will never be enough. You are too small, too weak, too human." The bond flickered. He felt Solari's presence. Thin, strained. She was fighting. Her own storm. Her fear bled into him. Fear of shame. Fear of failure. Fear that she had tied herself to someone unworthy. James fell to his knees, clutching his head. He wanted to scream, to tear himself free from the flood of pain. For a moment, he thought, it would snap. The bond, their strength, everything. But then he remembered her voice in the first trial. Do not let go. I am here. He closed his eyes and pushed everything he had into the bond. His stubbornness, his will, his memories of Earth, not just its beauty but its resilience. His people rebuilding after storms, after wars, after loss. His own choice to stand in this chamber when every part of him wanted to run. Solari, he shouted into the darkness of his mind. I'm still here. We don't break. Not now. The bond shuddered, then flared. Through the link, he felt her respond, not with words, but with strength. A rush of warmth poured into him, her determination, her fire. He saw flashes of her childhood again, not the sorrow this time, but the joy, her laughter in the silver fields, her brother teaching her how to climb the high crystal trees, her voice singing in the night winds. She shared it all, and it steadied him. Together they pushed back against the illusions. Every whisper, every shadow tried to claw them apart, but the bond burned brighter. James and Solari refused to yield. When the darkness finally cracked and shattered, James collapsed to the stone floor, gasping. Across the chamber, Solari fell too, her silver skin glistening with sweat. They were both trembling, exhausted, but alive. The council sat in silence, their eyes wide. The high speaker rose, her face unreadable. You have endured what should have broken you. The bond is proven. James slowly stood, his body aching. He met Solari's gaze. For a moment they said nothing, but the bond thrummed between them like a steady heartbeat. This time it was Solari who reached for his hand first, and James realized the breaking had not destroyed them. It had made them whole. The chamber was silent after the trial, but silence did not mean peace. The council's eyes followed James and Solari as they stood together, still weak from what they had endured. Whispers ran like small storms among the alien elders. Some were impressed, some doubtful, and others angry that their harshest test had failed to break them. The high speaker's voice carried across the hall. You have survived. You have endured. Yet survival is not proof enough. You claim to be bound human. But what does that bond mean? What does humanity itself bring to our people? Answer us. Why should we accept you? James felt his chest tighten. He had faced fire, illusions, darkness, and the tearing of his soul. But this question was different. They were not asking for strength. They were asking for meaning. He looked at Solari. The bond hummed softly, reminding him that he wasn't alone. She gave a small nod, her eyes telling him to speak, not as a warrior, not as a fighter, but as himself. James stepped forward. His voice trembled at first, but he didn't hold back. I am human. That means I am fragile. It means I make mistakes. It means I fall again and again. But it also means I get up. The council's faces were unreadable, but James kept going, his words carrying more fire with every breath. Humans are not perfect. We are not the strongest or the fastest or the most powerful, but we love fiercely. We stand beside each other even when the world burns. We protect those we care about, even if it costs us everything. That is what humanity brings. It is not power. It is not glory. It is heart. It is the choice to stand with someone and say, "I will not leave you." His voice cracked on the last words, but he did not hide it. He wanted them to see his truth, his rawness. He let them feel through the bond what he felt for Solari. Fear, yes, but also devotion, stubbornness, love. Solari then stepped beside him. Her own voice rang clear. "I am Solari of the Lyran. I have walked in shadow. I have carried shame. I have been told what I must be, and I have broken beneath it. But in him I found something my people forgot: hope. Through him I have learned that weakness can be strength, that pain can be shared, that love can bind stronger than crystal. If the council rejects him, then you reject me also, for I am no longer only Lyran. I am bonded." Her words echoed, like thunder through the chamber. The council members shifted, whispering louder now. Some looked shaken, others furious. The high speaker lifted her hand and the noise died at once. She gazed long at James, then at Solari. Her eyes, sharp as blades, softened just slightly. "You claim humanity's worth is not in power but in love. You claim your bond is more than illusion. Very well." She stood tall, her cloak flowing like a shadow. "The council has tested you with fire, with distance, with pain." The high speaker rose from her throne. Her voice filled the chamber. "The bond is not a ritual of words. It is the opening of truth. One life to another, one soul to another. If the link holds, unity is proven. If it fails, both will break. This is the law. This is the way." James's throat tightened. His hands trembled at his sides, but he curled them into fists, trying to steady himself. Solari stepped forward first. Without hesitation, she placed her slender hand upon the crystal. As her skin touched it, light flared across its surface, spreading upward into her arm and then into her chest. Her silver skin shimmered brighter, and James felt a wave of energy hum through the air. The high speaker's gaze turned to him. "Now you." James swallowed hard. His legs felt heavy, as if the stone floor itself wanted to keep him rooted, but slowly, step by step, he moved forward until he stood beside Solari. She did not look at him. Her eyes were fixed on the crystal, her expression calm, steady. He raised his hand. His palm hovered just an inch from the glowing surface. The heat of it pulsed against his skin, alive, waiting. His breath shook as he finally pressed his hand against it. The world exploded in light. James gasped as something surged into him, a force both gentle and brutal. It was like a river rushing through his veins, dragging him deeper and deeper into a place beyond thought. He tried to breathe, but his body no longer mattered. His mind was not his own. Memories hit him in waves, not his own at first. He saw Solari as a child, running through silver fields beneath two suns. He saw her standing tall before the council for the first time, her face proud though her hands shook. He saw her brother's death, a shadow falling across her heart, grief so sharp it made James himself cry out. Then, just as quickly, the tide shifted. Solari was seeing him. He felt his own memories pulled out, one after another. His first steps, on the beaches of Earth, the laughter of his mother, the long nights he spent studying under dim lights the moment he held his father's hand as he died. Every wound, every failure, every weakness laid bare. There was no hiding, no mask to wear. The bond saw everything. James wanted to pull back. The shame was too much, the pain too raw, but something in Solari's presence held him. She did not flinch from what she saw. She did not recoil. Her presence steadied him, like a hand resting gently on his shoulder. When the crystal dimmed, the light fading back into silence, James collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. Sweat clung to his skin, and his chest felt hollow and heavy, all at once. Solari still stood, She was pale, her body trembling ever so slightly, but she did not fall. Her eyes, though unreadable, lingered on James longer than before. For the first time, they seemed to hold not just cold duty, but a faint glimmer of something else. Understanding. The high speaker's voice cut through the silence. The bond has been made. Whispers spread through the chamber, sharp and echoing. Some were surprised, others doubtful. But no one could deny the crystal had glowed. No one could deny the link now forged. James stayed on the floor, chest heaving, his hand still tingling from the touch. He felt Solari in his mind now, faint but present, like a distant echo. Not words, not images, just a presence that wasn't his own. It was terrifying. It was overwhelming. And it was only the beginning. The bond changed everything. In the days after the ceremony, James could not escape it. He carried it with him like a second heartbeat, faint but constant. Sometimes it was quiet, like a distant hum at the edge of his thoughts. Other times it was sharp, a sudden flash of feeling or memory that wasn't his own. At first it unsettled him. He had never shared so much of himself with anyone, not even with the people he had loved most back on Earth. Now there was no hiding. Solari could sense him and he could sense her. It wasn't full words or clear images, more like shadows, emotions, and faint impressions. Yet it was enough to remind him every moment that he was not alone inside his own mind anymore. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the citadel, James walked with Solari through a long corridor of black crystal. The walls glowed faintly with their own light, and their footsteps echoed together. Neither of them spoke for a long time, but James could feel her presence pressing softly against his thoughts, steady and calm. Finally, she broke the silence. "You carry much pain." Her voice was calm, but her words cut deep. James stopped walking, his breath caught in his chest. He didn't need to ask how she knew. Of course she knew. She had seen it all during the ceremony, and she continued to feel it now. He gave a tired laugh, shaking his head. "Humans. We're good at pretending we're fine. We smile when we're breaking. We laugh when we're afraid. But inside we're carrying more than we admit." He looked down at his hands. "Now you know the truth. Every weakness, every mistake." Solari's gaze lingered on him. Her silver eyes no longer looked as cold as before. "Yes," she said softly. "I see it. And I do not despise it." James blinked at her. He had expected judgment, perhaps, even pity. But her words held neither. She continued, her voice lower now, almost thoughtful. "Pain shapes strength. Your people rise from loss again and again. You rise again. You gave me your truth when you could have hidden. That is rare, even among my kind." For a moment, James didn't know what to say. The weight of her words struck him harder than the council's demands had. She wasn't dismissing his pain, nor was she mocking it. She was acknowledging it, and in some strange way respecting it. They walked again, slower this time. James glanced at her, and for the first time since their meeting, he did not feel only fear. Something else stirred inside him, a spark of respect, maybe even trust. Later that night, when James returned to his chamber, he sat in silence and felt Solari's presence brushing gently against his mind. He realized then that the bond wasn't just about exposing pain. It was also about sharing strength. Every time he faltered, he felt her steadiness. Every time she wavered, he felt her resolve harden again. It was strange. It was terrifying. But it was also comforting. The next day, the council gathered them once more. The high speaker's eyes were sharp as ever. "The bond has been made. But bonds are not words. They must endure trial. You will be tested." James felt his stomach twist. Tested how? The high speaker did not answer directly. Instead, she lifted her hand and the chamber darkened around them. "The trial of unity will show if your bond is real or only an illusion. If it is weak, peace will fail. If it holds, proof will be given." James turned slightly toward Solari. Her expression was calm, but he could feel the weight of her emotions through the bond. She was not as unshaken as she looked. Quiet tension rippled inside her, and it touched him like a cold wind. When the chamber brightened again, the council dismissed them. James and Solari walked side by side down the silent halls. At last she spoke, her voice low. "They will try to break us apart. The trial will show us our deepest fears. Illusion, pain, loss. If we do not hold together, the bond will collapse. And we will collapse with it." James clenched his jaw. He had faced battles before. Wars of words, wars of politics. But this was different. This was not about speeches or strategies. This was about his soul. "Then we'll face it together," he said firmly. Solari glanced at him. For the first time, her lips curved, just slightly, the ghost of a smile. "Together," she repeated, and though fear still gnawed at James's chest, that single word gave him strength. Because now, for the first time, he did not feel entirely alone. The day of the trial came sooner than James expected. He stood once, more in the vast council chamber, but this time it was different. The air was heavy, thicker, as though the walls themselves were waiting. The council sat in silence, their glowing eyes fixed on him and Solari. At the center of the room, the great crystal pulsed slowly, waiting for them to step forward. The high speaker rose, her robe flowing like liquid silver. "The bond has been forged, but words and light are not enough. The trial of unity will test you. Illusion will be woven, pain will be shaped, and your truth will be torn apart. If you endure together, the bond is real. If you fail, it ends. Here." James's throat tightened. He glanced at Solari. Her face was calm, but through the bond he could feel her unease. A quiet storm beneath her stillness. She turned her head slightly and met his eyes. No words passed between them, but the bond carried a message all the same. Do not falter. They stepped forward together. The council began to chant in low voices, their language sharp and flowing like blades scraping over stone. The crystal brightened, its glow rising higher and higher until the entire chamber was drowned in light. James felt a pull deep in his chest, as if his very soul was being yanked forward. The world around him cracked and shattered like glass. When he opened his eyes, he was standing in darkness. No council, no chamber, no Solari, only silence. "Solari?" he called out, his voice echoing into emptiness. No answer. Then the illusions began. At first, James saw Earth, his home, blue skies, oceans stretching to the horizon, forest glowing green. But then it shifted. The sky burned red. Cities fell into flames. His people screamed, reaching for him, begging for help he could not give. He saw his mother's face, her eyes wide with fear, her voice crying his name as fire swallowed her. James dropped to his knees, clutching his head. "No, this isn't real." But the pain was real. The fear was real. Every image dug deep into him, pulling out every hidden terror he carried. The chamber was not made for human eyes. Its walls were carved from black stone that seemed to drink the light, and yet it shimmered faintly, alive with hidden veins of blue fire that pulsed like veins under skin. The ceiling stretched higher than any cathedral James Carter had ever seen back on Earth. Strange glowing orbs floated in the air, humming softly, casting shadows that shifted like ghosts. At the very center of this vast hall sat the alien council. They were 12 in number, arranged in a perfect circle, their thrones grown from crystal and stone as if the very planet itself bent to their will. Their eyes were fixed on one figure who stood alone in the middle. James, the only human in the galaxy's most feared council chamber. He felt the weight of their stares pressing down on him. His heart pounded in his chest, and yet he forced himself to stand tall. Earth had sent him here as an envoy, not a soldier, not a king, but a man who carried the burden of his people's fragile hope. The high speaker rose from her seat. She was tall, her silver robe flowing like liquid metal, her face sharp with an elegance that was almost painful to look at. Her voice echoed across the chamber. soft yet commanding, like wind moving through steel. Words are wind, human. We have heard your promises, your oaths of peace, your talk of unity, but we demand proof. The bond is the only proof. James swallowed hard. He had heard rumors of this. The bond was not a treaty signed with ink. It was not an exchange of gifts. It was something deeper, something dangerous. A ritual binding of lives where two beings opened their souls and tied them together until death. The High Speaker's voice did not waver. You will bond with one of our own. Your mind will be seen. Your soul will be laid bare. There will be no lies, no masks, no escape. Do you accept? Silence hung heavy in the air. The council's 12 pairs of alien eyes glowed faintly, waiting. Some looked at him with cold judgment, some with curiosity, and some with clear disdain. James's chest tightened. He was a man, not a saint. He had scars, both seen and unseen. He had failures, mistakes he regretted, and fears that clawed at him in the dark. If he agreed, nothing would remain hidden. His weaknesses, his guilt, even the parts of himself he hated would all be laid bare to an alien mind. Part of him wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at him to refuse. But then he thought of Earth. The oceans he loved, the forests where he played as a child, the laughter of his people, the fragile planet still struggling to rise among the stars. If he turned away now, if he let fear rule him, what would that mean for humanity's future? He clenched his fists. His father's voice echoed in his memory. Son, sometimes courage is not about winning. Sometimes it's about standing when every part of you wants to kneel. Slowly, James lifted his chin. His voice shook at first, but he forced it steady. I will bond. The chamber stirred with whispers, their language sharp and clicking like stone against stone. Some of the council leaned forward, surprised. Others nodded as though they had expected no less. The High Speaker tilted her head, eyes narrowing in sharp focus. You understand what you have agreed to? This is not a gesture. This is not temporary. The bond is for life. If it breaks, you will both break. If one dies, the other suffers. This is the path you choose? James met her gaze. His throat was dry, but his answer came clear. Yes. For my people, I will walk this path. The High Speaker regarded him, in silence, then finally nodded once. Her voice lowered, solemn now. Then it is decided. The choice is made. Bring forth the bondmate. The great doors at the far end of the chamber rumbled as they opened. A shadow stepped forward, tall and graceful, moving with a quiet strength. James caught only a glimpse of silver skin, of eyes that shimmered like starlight before the doors closed again with a heavy finality. He felt the world tilt beneath his feet. His fate had been sealed. And for the first time since he had left Earth, James truly understood the weight of the road he had chosen. The sound of footsteps echoed softly against the black stone floor. James lifted his eyes and saw her, his bondmate. She was unlike anything he had ever seen. Tall and slender, her movements were graceful, almost too smooth, as if the air itself parted to let her pass. Her skin shimmered with a pale silver glow, catching the chamber's light like polished moonlight. Her hair, if it could be called hair, floated around her head in strands of light, shifting colors between white and blue. But it was her eyes that struck him most. They were not human eyes. They were deep, endless, and filled with a cold kind of brilliance, as though two stars had been trapped in her gaze. The council whispered her name with reverence. Solari. She walked with a quiet dignity, her silver robe trailing softly behind her, and came to stand before James. For a moment, she did not speak. She simply looked at him, her head tilted slightly, as if studying a strange creature she had only heard about in stories. James's mouth was dry. He forced himself to meet her gaze, though every part of him felt exposed. You are human, Solari said at last. Her voice was soft, smooth, almost melodic, but there was no warmth in it, only curiosity. I have never stood so close to one before. Her words made James feel smaller than he already did in that vast chamber, but he steadied himself and nodded. Yes, I am human, and I agreed to the bond. Solari's expression did not change. She moved a little closer, her eyes scanning him as though she could see past skin and bone. You fear this. The truth struck him hard because she was right. He did fear it. He feared the bond, feared what it would reveal, feared the weight of what he had promised. But running from truth now would only make him weaker. Yes, James admitted, his voice low. I'm afraid, but I will not run. Something flickered across Solari's face then. Just for a moment. Not a smile, not quite approval, but a faint recognition, as if his honesty had brushed against something she respected. She folded her hands behind her back, her tone calm and steady. Do you understand what you're stepping into? Bonding is not a ritual for show. It is not words or ink. It is surrender. You will open your soul. I will see every shadow, every regret, every piece of your truth. Nothing can be hidden. Her words pressed into him like a weight. James thought of his childhood, of mistakes he had tried to bury, of guilt he still carried for choices he had made. The idea of another being, an alien no less, seeing it all, made him want to shrink back. But he could not. Not after everything he had promised. He clenched his fists and whispered, I understand. Solari studied him again, her silver eyes unreadable. For her people, bonding was sacred, a mark of honor and unity. But it was also dangerous. If the bond failed, both souls could shatter. If one could not carry the other's truth, it could destroy them from the inside. Many of my kind, Solari said slowly, do not believe your species can withstand this. Humans are fragile. They live quickly and die quickly. You break easily. James gave a small, tired laugh. Maybe. But we're stubborn. We don't give up. Even when everything tells us to stop, we keep moving. That's what it means to be human. This time, Solari's head tilted again, but there was something softer in her gaze. She did not answer him, but she no longer looked at him like a stranger either. The council shifted, watching, waiting. They wanted to see if the first spark of connection would form. Solari turned, her robe flowing around her like water, and faced the council. The human has accepted. I will bond. A ripple of sound moved through the chamber. Some of the council nodded in approval, others muttered doubt, but the decision was sealed. James felt his chest tighten as the high speaker lifted her hand. Then the ceremony will begin at dawn. Solari's eyes met his one last time before she turned away. In that brief look, James felt something he could not name. Cold duty, yes, but also the faintest spark of something else, something he hoped would grow. As the chamber doors closed, James exhaled a long, shaky breath. His fate was now tied to hers, and deep inside he wondered, would she see him as weak when she looked into his soul, or would she see something worth keeping? The dawn came with silence. James had not slept much the night before. His mind was restless, caught between fear and duty. Every time he closed his eyes, he thought about the bond. What would it feel like? Would it hurt? Would Solari see every weakness he had tried to bury? He lay awake in the small chamber they had given him, staring at the strange patterns glowing faintly on the ceiling, until the sound of footsteps came to his door. The council waits, said a guard, his voice deep and echoing. James rose slowly, his stomach heavy like stone. He adjusted the simple white robe they had given him. It felt strange against his skin, rough in some places and too light in others, like it wasn't made for him. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe nothing in this place was made for humans. He followed the guard through tall, winding halls carved from black crystal until they arrived at the same great chamber as before. Only this time the air was different. Heavy, sacred. The floating orbs of light glowed brighter, pulsing like heartbeats. The walls shimmered faintly as if alive, and at the center of the chamber stood a great crystal, taller than James, glowing with a deep, slow pulse of light, like it had its own living soul. Solari was already there. She stood with perfect posture, her silver robe flowing around her, her expression calm but unreadable. When James entered, her eyes met his, and for a moment he thought he saw the faintest flicker of tension in her gaze. But she did not move.